Ballroom glittered like a dream, draped in gold, echoes of piano music floating through the air. Crystal chandeliers cast diamonds of light onto polished floors, where women in silk gowns twirled, and tuxedoed men sipped from champagne flutes without a care in the world. Alessia Rivera stood frozen at the edge of the room, a silver tray balanced carefully in her trembling hands. The scent of lilies and expensive perfume made her head spin, or maybe it was the lack of food today. Her feet ached in two small black flats, and her hair was pinned back into a tight bun that made her temples throb. She shifted under the itchy borrowed uniform that marked her as one of the catering staff. These people didn't see her. She was invisible. A shadow in a room of stars. And that suited her just fine. Until she looked up, and locked eyes with him. Luca Moretti. He stood on the far side of the ballroom, near a marble column draped with red roses. A black suit hugged his tall frame like it was sewn to his skin, shoulders broad and posture regal. His dark hair was slicked back with purpose, the sharp angles of his jaw catching the light like a sculpture carved from stone. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't talking. He was watching her. Alessia blinked and quickly looked away. Heat rushed up her neck, setting her cheeks aflame. No. There was no way a man like that was looking at her. She tightened her grip on the tray, trying to steady her nerves. "Excuse me," a blonde woman snapped, snapping her fingers. "Champagne." Alessia muttered an apology, offered a flute, and backed away as quickly as politeness allowed. When she dared glance up again, he was gone. She escaped to the hallway 5 minutes later, pressing her back against the cool marble wall. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, and she exhaled slowly, counting the seconds until she felt normal again. It was just a look. A strange moment. No one noticed her. That was the point of this job. Quiet. Quick. Unseen. "Are you running from me?" The voice made her jump. Deep, smooth, with a velvet edge of danger. It echoed slightly in the high-ceilinged corridor, and when she turned, he was right there. Luca Moretti. Closer than she expected. Tall, commanding, too perfect for reality. His eyes were a stormy gray, and right now they were pinned directly on her. She stammered. "Sir, I was just—" "I know who you are," he said. Her brows furrowed. "You do?" Alessia Rivera. 23. Law student. Works 2 jobs. Student loans. Father in the hospital. His voice was calm, almost bored, but she could hear the weight beneath it. "You think I'd offer a marriage contract to just anyone?" Alessia stared at him, ice shooting down her spine. "Excuse me." Luca stepped closer. He smelled like cedarwood and something darker, something expensive. "I need a wife. For 1 year. No intimacy, no romance. Purely transactional. Appearances only. In exchange, I'll pay off your debts, fund your degree, and ensure your father gets the best medical care in the country." She gaped at him. Was this a joke? "Is this some kind of game to you?" she whispered, voice cracking. "Do you make a habit of buying people?" "No," he said simply. "Only the ones I need." They stood in silence for a moment, the music from the ballroom faint in the distance. Alessia's hands were still shaking, though the tray was long gone. Luca didn't blink. His presence was suffocating in a way that wasn't entirely unpleasant, like standing too close to fire and forgetting it could burn you. "Why me?" she finally asked, almost to herself. His jaw tightened slightly. "Because you're believable. You're not from this world. You don't wear fake smiles or fawn over my last name. My associates will believe it because they won't see you coming. So I'm just a prop to you. For now." His voice dropped lower on those 2 words. Alessia felt heat crawl across her skin. Her breath caught in her throat, but she forced herself to look away. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Why a marriage? Why not just hire an actress, she asked, voice more steady this time. He studied her. Because the stakes are real. My grandfather's inheritance requires a legitimate union. Marriage, not engagement. Not public partner. It must last 12 months. My enemies will be watching for any cracks. Alessia turned slowly, facing him fully. And if I say no? Luca's lips twitched, just barely. Then I wish you luck paying your father's hospital bills. I imagine the ICU will be quite expensive this month. Her face paled. The cruelty wasn't in his tone, it was in the truth. This wasn't just a game. This was blackmail. But also, somehow, an offer. She had no choices left. And he knew it. They sat across from each other 2 nights later in his penthouse, a palace of glass and steel high above the city. A contract lay between them on a marble table. She hadn't eaten. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the pen. Do I have to live here? She asked softly. Yes. In your room? No. Alessia looked up. But we'll pretend. Luca's eyes darkened. If needed. But I won't touch you unless you ask me to. That somehow made it worse. She swallowed hard, heart in her throat. Her signature scrawled across the line like a whisper. It was done. She was Mrs. Luca Moretti. The first night in the penthouse was a dream wrapped in a nightmare. Everything gleamed, onyx floors, silk sheets, golden fixtures. A walk-in closet held designer clothes with tags still attached. A private chef offered her imported pasta with white truffle, which she politely declined because her stomach was a war zone. Luca didn't speak much. He disappeared into his office after dinner, leaving her alone in the cavernous suite with its cold art and city lights. When she opened the door to her new bedroom, she found a note on the pillow. I'll protect what's mine. Even if it's just for a year. L. She didn't sleep. 2 weeks passed. The media exploded with headlines. Luca Moretti's secret bride, who is Alessia Rivera? From law student to billionaire's wife, a Cinderella story or strategic move? Paparazzi swarmed the penthouse gate. But Luca was calm. Always calm. He escorted her to charity galas, business dinners, and high society events with a hand on her back and a voice in her ear, smile, just a little. Or, don't let them see your nerves. He never touched her in private. But he always watched. At a gala one evening, Alessia wore a fitted sapphire gown he'd picked. She'd never owned anything so luxurious. Her hair curled down her back, and diamond earrings sparkled beneath the chandelier's glow. Luca stood beside her like a king, black suit, black tie, gray eyes sharp as ice. Every woman in the room looked at him. Every man looked at her. And Luca noticed. When one man, a young tech CEO, got too close, offering a smirk and lingering eyes, Luca's arm coiled around Alessia's waist. His grip was firm. Possessive. The man backed off. But Luca didn't let go. He leaned close, his breath warm on her neck. Careful, cara mia, he murmured. You're turning heads tonight. Alessia turned, surprised. I thought I was just a prop. His jaw tightened. I didn't say I liked sharing. Then, without warning, he pecked her. Not gently. Not tenderly. It was a claim. Hot and hard and possessive, burning against it with a hunger that said one thing. Mine. It ended as suddenly as it had begun. Alessia staggered a half step back, lips tingling, heart slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. The gala swirled around her, but it sounded muffled now, like she was underwater, drowning in silence. Luca's eyes met hers. Dark. Hungry. Unapologetic. Her hand hovered near her lips. Why did you do that? He smoothed his suit jacket like nothing had happened. Because he touched what's mine. She blinked. I'm not. You are, he said, voice low but firm, at least as far as the world is concerned. His jaw flexed. And I don't share. Then he turned and walked off, leaving her standing there, breathless in the center of a glittering room full of strangers pretending not to stare. They didn't speak on the ride home. Luca sat beside her in the back of the sleek black Bentley, his expression unreadable. Outside, the city blurred past in golden streaks, but all Alessia could feel was the heat still lingering on her lips. The kiss wasn't part of the deal. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. So why did it feel like something inside her had cracked open? As the elevator doors opened to the penthouse, Luca stepped out first. Alessia followed slowly, the hem of her sapphire gown whispering against the marble floor. He paused at the entrance to his study, glancing back at her. Don't read into it. I wasn't going to, she lied. He nodded. Once, as if satisfied. Then he disappeared behind the door. She didn't sleep that night. The sheets were too soft, the silence too loud, and her body still pulsed with confusion and longing. When the sun rose, she was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, Luca's note still tucked under her pillow. I'll protect what's mine. Even if it's just for a year. But that kiss. That wasn't part of protection. That was something else. The next morning was quiet. Alessia walked into the sun-drenched dining area wearing a cream silk robe one of the housekeepers had laid out for her. She found breakfast arranged, fresh croissants, mango slices, and golden scrambled eggs, but Luca wasn't there. Instead, a folder sat on the table with her name written across the top in his handwriting. Inside, hospital paperwork, tuition transfers, and a sealed envelope containing a personal check for her father's ongoing care. She stared at it all, overwhelmed. He was serious. This wasn't just about appearances. He was truly taking care of her, and her family. But why? She pressed her palm to her chest. Why was the man she was pretending to be married to starting to feel more real than anyone she'd ever known? Later that afternoon, she found herself wandering into his private library, a floor-to-ceiling haven of leather-bound books and soft lighting. Luca sat near the window, reading a file. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, veins visible along his forearms. She cleared her throat. He looked up. Alessia. I wanted to say thank you, she said softly. You already signed the contract. I'm not thanking you for the money, she added, stepping forward. I'm thanking you for being decent. I know that's not the reputation you have, but don't. His voice was sharp. She froze. I don't need your gratitude, he said. And I'm not a good man. The silence stretched like wire. She lowered her gaze. You kissed me. I did. Was that also in the contract? No. She looked up, heart hammering. Then why? His eyes met hers, cold and careful. Because I wanted to. She swallowed. And now? I want to forget it happened. The words hit like a slap. Alessia nodded slowly, her throat tight. Of course. She turned to leave, but he stood abruptly, walking toward her. Wait. She paused, not facing him. His voice softened. I don't want to hurt you. But you will, she whispered. There was no answer. Only silence. That night, as rain whispered against the penthouse windows, Alessia lay in bed, eyes wide open. One kiss had rewritten everything. She was supposed to be pretending. Faking. But now, she wasn't sure where the act ended and her feelings began. And something deep inside her told her, this was only the beginning. The first thing Alessia noticed was how quiet everything was. No noisy neighbors. No creaking floors. No late-night sirens from the street below. Just silence. And space. Marble, velvet, silk. Silk, everything in Luca Moretti's penthouse felt designed to remind her she didn't belong. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, swallowing up the skyline. The light fixtures were sculpted like art. Even the air smelled expensive, like oud and power. She stood barefoot in the walk-in closet, staring at row after row of designer shoes she would never dare wear. Her name had been added to every label, stitched in gold thread. Her whole life had changed in a signature. Now, she was Alessia Moretti. But who was that, really? She found him in the kitchen the next morning, calm and composed in a crisp black shirt, sleeves rolled up. He didn't look up when she entered, just turned the page of his newspaper and sipped his coffee like it was any other day. She hesitated at the doorway, tightening the silk robe the staff had laid out for her. "Good morning," she offered softly. His eyes flicked up. "You slept." "A little." He folded the paper in half, setting it down with perfect precision. "There's food. Sit." The tone wasn't cruel. Just, matter-of-fact. She obeyed, taking the chair across from him. The table had already been set, fruit, toast, eggs, tea. Everything prepared by invisible hands before she ever opened her eyes. "Thank you," she murmured, reaching for the tea. He nodded once but didn't speak. The silence stretched, awkward and heavy. "Do you always eat in silence?" she asked finally. His brow lifted slightly. "When I'm alone." She blinked. "But I'm here." He met her eyes, cool and unreadable. "That doesn't make me any less alone." Later that day, she was whisked off in a private car to an upscale boutique in Victoria Island. It was time for her wife wardrobe. The shop was empty, reserved just for her. Golden chandeliers glowed overhead. Stylists flitted around her like butterflies, whispering about which designers to pull. She tried on silk, satin, velvet. They brought her an emerald green dress, soft and sculpted to her figure. Alessia stared at herself in the mirror, unsure if she even recognized the reflection. Then she saw him. Luca had entered without a sound, now seated in a leather chair across the room. Watching. Her breath caught. The stylists didn't notice, still fussing with the fabric. But Alessia's hands trembled as she stepped off the platform. "Too much?" she asked, unsure whether to twirl or hide. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood and walked toward her, every movement slow and deliberate. When he reached her, he didn't touch her waist. He didn't take her hand. He simply adjusted one strap of the gown that had slipped slightly off her shoulder. His fingers were warm against her skin. His voice was a low murmur. If this were real. His thumb brushed just below her collarbone. "I wouldn't let you leave the house in this." Her skin prickled. She looked up into his eyes, but he was already turning away. Dinner that night was complicated. The table was long enough to seat 20. Candles flickered between them, but the space in the middle might as well have been a wall. She wore one of the new gowns, black satin, off the shoulder, a little too fitted for comfort. He wore charcoal, no tie, just precision and control. They ate in near silence. "You don't speak much," she said after several minutes. "You ask too many questions," he replied without looking up. She smiled faintly. "That's what law students do." He set down his fork. "Then let me ask one." She blinked. "Okay. Why didn't you hesitate to sign?" She swallowed. "I didn't say yes right away." "You didn't say no either." Alessia stared at her plate. "Because I've never had power. Not even the illusion of it." He leaned back. "And now you do." She met his gaze. "Now I have you." Luca's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. She could feel it. That night, she found him on the rooftop. The breeze tugged gently at her robe. City lights twinkled below like fallen stars. He stood near the glass railing, a tumbler of scotch in hand, staring at nothing. "I couldn't sleep," she said quietly. "I know," he replied without turning. She moved beside him, folding her arms to fight the chill. He noticed. Without a word, he took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. They stood there for a long moment, not touching, not speaking. Just breathing. "I never asked why you need a wife," she said eventually. Luca's jaw tensed. "You read the contract." "I did," she said. "But that's not the same as truth." He looked at her then, really looked. "My grandfather's estate is tied to appearances. Legacy. Control. If I want to keep what's mine, I have to be respectable. And you're not." His lips twitched. "What do you think?" She hesitated. "I think you're terrifying. But also, lonely." That silenced him. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then. "I lost my brother 3 years ago," he said, voice rougher now. "And I haven't felt real since." She turned toward him slowly. "Is that why you kissed me?" "No." "Then why?" He exhaled. "Because for 3 seconds, I forgot this was fake." Alessia's heart stuttered. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came. Instead, she stepped a little closer. Their shoulders brushed. His scent, leather, pine, fire, wrapped around her. "You forgot," she whispered. "Yeah. So what happens if I forget too?" He looked at her, eyes burning. "Then we're both in trouble." The car ride home was thick with silence. Alessia stared out the window, one hand resting gently on her lap, her thoughts spinning in circles. The lights of Lagos blurred by, gold and white and cold against the glass. Her lips still tingled. That kiss, it wasn't for show. She knew it. And worse, so did he. Luca sat beside her, his arm draped casually along the backrest, his legs crossed in an easy, practiced confidence. But she could feel the tension in him, his stillness too sharp, too quiet. His eyes were on her, not the city. They hadn't spoken since the dance. The music, the pressure of his hand at her back, the weight of his jealousy in every move, it had made her forget why she ever agreed to this arrangement. Now she didn't know how to breathe. She glanced at him. "That was a mistake," he offered, his voice unreadable. Her chest tightened. "Is that what it was?" He didn't answer. Instead, he shifted in his seat, looking out the opposite window. "I told you. I don't share." Alessia turned fully to him. "And what exactly am I, Luca? A trophy? A body to parade so your enemies think you're in control?" "No," he said, low and certain. "You're the only thing I can't control." The words landed like a strike to the chest. Before she could respond, the car slowed beneath the portico of the penthouse. The door opened. Luca stepped out first. He didn't wait for her. She followed in silence, her heels echoing softly against marble as they entered the private elevator. He pressed the button for the penthouse. The doors closed. She couldn't take it anymore. "You kissed me like I belonged to you." Luca didn't move. "You said no intimacy. You said we'd be a facade. That this wasn't supposed to feel real." Still, he didn't speak. She took a step closer. "Then why did you do it?" His jaw flexed. "I saw him touch you," he said finally. "So?" she challenged. "It was just my back. It wasn't even inappropriate." "I don't care if it was a handshake," Luca snapped. You're mine, Alessia. And I don't want another man's hands on you. She stared up at him, her voice trembling. You said I'd never have to pretend in private. But it doesn't feel like pretending anymore. The elevator stopped. The doors slid open. But neither of them moved. Then Luca turned to face her, closing the space between them. You want to know what that kiss meant? She couldn't speak. Her heart beat too fast. He leaned in. Not touching. Just enough to make her body ache from the restraint. It meant I was seconds away from dragging you out of that room, he whispered. And reminding you who you belong to. Her breath hitched. He stepped back. You have your room, he said flatly. I suggest you use it tonight. And then he walked out. Alessia barely slept. She stood at the window for hours, watching the city sparkle in the dark, her hands pressed to the glass. The gold gown still clung to her skin like a second layer of nerves. That kiss had set off a fire inside her. But it was more than that. She was starting to fall. And falling for a man like Luca Moretti was more dangerous than anything she'd ever faced. The next morning, she woke to an empty penthouse. No note. No breakfast. Just silence. She showered slowly, letting the steam calm her pounding heart, then changed into one of the simpler outfits, cream blouse, black trousers. No. No diamonds. No designer heels. Just her. By midday, her phone buzzed. A message from Luca. Meeting. You're coming with me. Be ready in 10. That was all. The meeting was held at a private members-only club, a place so exclusive it didn't even have a name on the building. Alessia walked beside him, quiet, her eyes scanning the room full of powerful men. She didn't understand all the conversations. But she noticed the way everyone deferred to Luca. Even the oldest, most seasoned CEOs treated him like royalty. It made her skin prickle. He introduced her once. My wife, Alessia. The word wife settled like a weight in her chest. And the way one man stared at her, too long, too boldly, didn't go unnoticed. Luca's hand was at her lower back in seconds. The conversation shifted. The man didn't look at her again. As they left, Luca didn't speak. They rode back in silence, just like the night before. But this time, his hand stayed beside hers on the seat. Not touching. But not far. Close enough to remind her that no matter what he said, something had shifted. And neither of them were going back. The storm rolled in slowly. Thunder grumbled in the distance, soft at first, like a warning. Then the rain came, steady, cleansing, tapping gently against the tall glass windows of the penthouse. Alessia stood alone in the kitchen, cradling a warm cup of tea in her hands. She hadn't seen Luca all evening. Since the gala, since the peck, everything between them had been taut and quiet, as if words could tear it. She found him in the study. He stood by the window, his back to her, the storm lighting his face in occasional flashes of blue-white. A glass of something dark in his hand. Still dressed in the black shirt from earlier that day, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. He didn't speak when she entered. Are you hiding? She asked softly. He didn't turn. I don't hide. She stepped further into the room. You've been avoiding me. Have I? Don't play dumb, Luca. You pecked me like I was the only woman in the world. Then you acted like it didn't matter. Finally, he turned. His eyes locked on hers. It shouldn't matter. But it does. The room went quiet except for the rain. I didn't come in here to fight, Alessia said, walking slowly toward him. Then why did you come? To find out if I'm the only one pretending. He stared at her. No, he said, voice rough. You're not. Lightning lit up the room again, briefly illuminating the space between them. It was only a step. But it felt like a decision. She took it. "I'm tired of acting like this is just business," she said. Luca's eyes dropped to her mouth. "Then stop acting." Her breath caught. And that was all it took. He reached for her. Not fast. Not forceful. Just deliberate. One hand slid to the small of her back, pulling her close. The other cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her jaw. And then he pecked her. There was no pretense, no control, no. Like the storm inside him had quieted. At least for a few hours. She watched him for a moment. Just breathed him in. She should have felt regret. She should have felt ashamed. But all she felt was full. Like something inside her had finally stopped aching. Her hand brushed lightly over her stomach. He left before she could speak. By the time she stepped into the kitchen, Luca was gone. The dishes were cleared, the staff was silent, and the world was pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. She touched her lips, still remembering the way he whispered her name the night before, raw, almost reverent. And still, no note. No message. No explanation. Back to pretending. 2 weeks passed. Luca was distant. Not cruel. Not cold. But professional again. Efficient. Controlled. He called her for dinners, for public appearances, for photographs and smiles. And when the cameras were gone, so was he. And Alessia, she tried. Tried to be what the contract asked of her. Tried not to feel. But her body had other plans. It started with the nausea. Mornings, then afternoons. A twist in her gut every time she smelled coffee. Exhaustion. The constant fluttering in her chest, like her heart was trying to warn her of something. She ignored it. Until she couldn't. One rainy afternoon, while Luca was away at meetings, she left the penthouse. Hat pulled low. Sunglasses on. No security. She went to the pharmacy 3 blocks away, praying no one would recognize her. Bought the test in a whisper. Back home, she paced. 1 line. Then 2. Her knees gave out. She sat on the floor of the massive marble bathroom, the test clutched in her trembling hand. Pregnant. She was pregnant. She pressed her hands to her stomach, as if the truth might vanish under pressure. But it didn't. Her head spun. She was pregnant with Luca Moretti's child. When he returned that night, she was still in her robe, curled up on the velvet couch in the living room. She didn't say a word. Neither did he. Until. "You're quiet," he said, setting down his keys. "Everything okay?" She opened her mouth. Then closed it. This wasn't the moment. She wasn't ready for the look on his face. "Fine," she said softly. But she didn't sleep that night. And neither, she noticed, did he. They didn't sleep. Not really. Alessia lay beside him, their bodies separated by the width of the bed and 1,000 unspoken questions. Luca had said he would protect them. But he hadn't said he wanted the baby. And that silence haunted her. The next morning, she sat on the edge of the bed, absently running her hand over the place where her bump would one day show. Luca came in, freshly showered, already dressed in a black shirt and slacks. Controlled. Tense. Restless. "I need to take you somewhere," he said. She looked up. "Where?" "Somewhere no one can reach us." The drive was long. 3 hours outside of Lagos, along winding roads and over mist-covered cliffs. Alessia dozed against the window, waking only when the SUV stopped at a set of iron gates opening onto a private estate. The villa rose like something from a dream, all glass and white stone, perched above the ocean like it owned the horizon. "This is yours," she whispered. Luca nodded. No one knows about it. Not even my board. And why bring me here? He looked at her, jaw tight. Because if someone finds out about the baby before I find out who's watching us, I'll lose you. The first night in the villa was quiet. Too quiet. Alessia stood on the rooftop terrace, ocean wind playing with her silk robe. She sensed him behind her before he spoke. You never asked about my family, he said. She turned slightly. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. I had a brother, Luca said, voice rough. Daniel. Her heart softened. What happened? He was killed 5 years ago. Ambushed leaving a meeting that was meant for me. A beat of silence. Alessia's breath caught. You think it was your fault? He nodded once. I know it was. She stepped toward him. I didn't let myself feel anything after that, he continued. Not guilt. Not grief. Not love. Especially not love. And now, she whispered. His eyes met hers. And now I'm terrified. Because for the first time in 5 years, I care what happens to someone more than what happens to me. She reached for him. You can't protect us from everything. I can try, he said. Or I can burn everything that threatens you to ash. The next morning, Luca was tense. Too still. Too quiet. One of his men handed him a black envelope at breakfast. No seal. No name. Just one sentence. You can't protect them forever. He read it once. Then again. Then set it on fire in a crystal ashtray, watching the flames eat away the threat with cold detachment. Alessia stepped into the room just as it burned. What was that? Nothing you need to worry about, he said. You're lying. He turned, slowly. Yes. I am. That night, they didn't make love. They just held each other in the dark, not for lust, but for survival. And for the first time, Alessia whispered something into his neck he wasn't sure he deserved to hear. You're going to be a good father. He didn't reply. But he held her tighter. Like he was afraid of letting go. The villa was quiet again. Too quiet. The black envelope had been burned. Luca gave no details. He simply told her to pack, and within hours, they were back in Lagos. But something had shifted. Luca no longer left her alone in public. His arm was always around her waist. He called in 2 new bodyguards. He even stopped taking late-night calls in another room. Alessia should have felt safe. Instead, she felt exposed. Like the world was tightening around them. 3 days after their return, it happened. She was in the penthouse's sunroom, curled up with a book, when the front door buzzed. The housekeeper hesitated. Ma, there's someone here. Says she won't leave. Alessia frowned. Who? But she didn't need an answer. Because seconds later, she heard the heels. And then she saw her. Tall. Perfect. Model slim in a tight black dress that hugged every impossible curve. Glossy lips. Smoky eyes. Confidence like a weapon. She didn't look at the staff. She looked straight at Alessia. You must be the wife. Alessia stood slowly. Excuse me. The woman smirked. I'm Naomi. Alessia blinked. And I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Naomi's smile widened. I'm not here to sell, she said. I'm here to remind you that this little fantasy of yours, this penthouse, the dresses, the ring, it's all temporary. I'm the one he comes back to. Alessia felt her stomach twist. She tried to keep her voice steady. I don't know who you think you are. Oh, sweetheart, Naomi cut in. I'm the woman he's loved for years. The one he always calls when he's done playing house. Silence. Alessia's chest was burning. I don't believe you. Naomi stepped closer, heels clicking like shots. Then ask him, she said, low and cruel. Ask him who he spent the weekend with before he married you. Luca returned hours later. Alessia didn't speak when he entered. She was sitting at the dining table, back straight, hands folded. He paused when he saw her. What's wrong? Who is Naomi? His body stilled. Then he slowly set his keys down. Where did you hear that name? She came here. His voice dropped. She what? She said you always come back to her. That this marriage is just a game. That I'm temporary. Luca's jaw was clenched so tight she could see it twitch. She's lying. You didn't answer my question. He stepped forward. She was part of my life. Years ago. Before me. He nodded once. Yes. During me? No, his eyes burned. Never. Alessia stood. Then why is she so sure she still has you? Luca crossed the room in 2 strides. He stopped just short of her. His hands didn't touch her, but his voice did. Because I let her believe that before you existed. And now? He didn't blink. Now. I forget she does. Later that night, he found her in the bedroom, arms wrapped around her knees on the edge of the bed. He sat beside her slowly, keeping a few inches of space between them. She meant nothing, Alessia. You don't get to decide what hurts me, she said softly. I know. A pause. Then, quieter, you've had a lot of women, haven't you? He didn't lie. Yes. And I'm different how? Luca turned to her. You didn't want anything from me. You didn't chase me. You didn't flinch when I was cruel. You looked me in the eye and said no when everyone else would have begged to say yes. She turned her face away. And yet I still ended up here. Begging for a scrap of real. He was silent for a long time. Then he whispered, you already have it. Alessia turned to him. He reached for her hand. Gently, reverently. And placed it on her belly. I've never had anything real, he said. Until you. It happened on a Tuesday. The sky was soft with clouds, the day almost calm. Alessia had just left the private clinic Luca arranged for her checkup. She'd seen their baby on the screen for the first time, a faint flicker of life. A heartbeat. She'd smiled the whole ride home. Until the black SUV didn't take her home. Wrong turn, she asked the driver. He said nothing. Alessia's fingers curled slowly around her phone, but before she could unlock it. The car sped up. The windows darkened. She opened her mouth to scream. When Luca answered the call, his face turned to stone. The guard's voice was tight. She never arrived back. GPS went dead 6 minutes ago. Last location, approaching Oberland bypass. Luca didn't blink. Who has her? We don't know yet. Then find out. His voice dropped to lethal quiet. Or don't come back. He ended the call and stood in the Luca's office tower, nightfall. The driverless car is found parked across from a warehouse district. The guards are unconscious. Luca sees the footage. His composure cracks. Bring the car. Bring everyone. His voice is pure ice. Everyone around him moves into action. Alessia sits on the floor, hands bound, but defiant. A man in a suit, polished but brutal, tells her. He took my brother. I take his child. She doesn't cry. Then you'll never leave this place alive. Sirens faint in the distance. Luca arrives with black SUVs, bodyguards, and fury. He walks into the warehouse alone. No negotiation. Just presence. You made a mistake touching her. The moment is fast, chaotic, shouting, gunshots in the air, but Luca never flinches. He finds her, wrapped in chains and trembling, but alive. He drops to his knees, pulls her into his arms, and whispers, "I'm here. I've got you. I will never let this happen again." The warehouse was behind them. The bruises were fading. But the silence between them hadn't healed. Alessia sat on the balcony of the penthouse, wrapped in a cashmere shawl, watching the sunrise turn the city gold. She hadn't spoken much since the rescue. She was safe, yes. But something had changed in her eyes. Not fear. Not anger. Something quieter. Something like distance. Behind her, the sliding glass door opened. She didn't turn, but she felt Luca's presence before she heard his voice. "You haven't asked me why I didn't kill him." Her breath caught. "I didn't have to," she said. "I saw it in your face." Luca stood beside her now, hands in his pockets. His voice was rough. "I wanted to. God, Alessia, I wanted to." She turned finally, searching his expression. "But you didn't." "No," he said, jaw tight. "Because if I did, I'd become the thing you think I'm not." There was a pause. The air between them thick with words they hadn't said. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Any of this?" He looked at her, really looked. "Only that it took nearly losing you to realize what I've been lying to myself about." Her heart skipped. He stepped closer. "No more contracts. No more pretending. No more halves." Alessia's breath trembled. "Luca. I love you." The words came out low and firm, like he'd been holding them back for too long. She stared at him, stunned. "I don't deserve you," he added. "But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to." Later that evening, they stood in the nursery, freshly painted in soft gold. Luca held a tiny mobile in his hands, stars and moons hand-carved from dark wood. "I had this made," he said, a little embarrassed. Didn't want strangers touching her first toys. Their daughter. Alessia smiled, placing a hand over her belly. "She'll know," Alessia whispered. "She'll know what love looks like." Luca looked at her then, this woman who had walked into his life as part of a deal, and now held his entire heart. And for the first time, he allowed himself to feel hope. Not because he'd earned it, but because she had taught him how. Later that night, Alessia stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bedroom, one hand resting on the gentle curve of her belly. She was starting to show. Just barely. A soft swell. But enough to make it real. The silk robe she wore barely brushed the floor. The city outside sparkled in blues and silvers, but she wasn't looking at the skyline. She was staring at her own reflection, and wondering who she had become. She didn't hear him come in. But she felt his presence. Like always. Luca stood behind her, his reflection suddenly beside hers in the mirror. He wore no jacket, only a crisp white shirt rolled at the sleeves, top buttons undone. His voice was low. "You still think I'm going to leave, don't you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she said softly, "I'm scared of loving something that doesn't love me back." He stepped closer. His hands came around her waist, gently. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "But I know I can't lose you." She turned slowly to face him, eyes shining. "You can't keep loving through control, Luca." "I'm trying not to," he whispered. "I'm trying to love you like you deserve. Not because I want to own you, but because you're the only thing that's ever made me want more than survival." Alessia leaned into his touch, letting her forehead press to his chest. He rested his chin on her head, arms tightening around her. For a long while, they stood like that. Just the two of them. No cameras. No shadows. No past. Only the sound of his heartbeat, and hers. The next morning, Luca called her into his study. He handed her a document. A plain envelope. No gold seals. No legal jargon. It was a revised contract. Torn in half. "I don't want conditions between us anymore," he said. "No deals. No obligations." Alessia raised a brow. "Is this your way of asking me to stay?" "It's my way of asking you to choose me." Her eyes didn't leave his as she walked over and gently took his face in her hands. "I already have." Then she pecked him. And for once, he didn't take control. He simply let go. That evening, Luca showed her the finished nursery. Sunlight spilled across the soft gold walls and cloud-shaped pillows. A plush rug covered the floor. A white crib sat in the center, handcrafted, elegant, simple. Not bought with status, but with care. She stepped into the room like it was sacred. "Is it silly that I want to cry over a crib?" she whispered. "No," he said behind her, voice thick. "I wanted to cry just watching you walk into the room." She turned, blinking fast. "I didn't think I'd ever have this," she said. "A life. A home. Someone to fight for me." Luca walked over and gently knelt in front of her, placing his ear to her belly. "You both have me," he whispered. "Forever." The sky was still pink when Alessia woke. The soft morning light spilled across the nursery floor, touching the edge of the crib like a quiet blessing. She moved slowly, careful not to wake the baby nestled in her arms. Her daughter. Their daughter. Tiny fingers curled around her thumb. A peaceful breath rose and fell against her skin. She stood for a moment, watching her. The miracle they didn't plan, but now couldn't imagine life without. Behind her, footsteps padded across the nursery floor. She didn't need to look to know it was him. Luca. His hand slipped gently around her waist from behind, his chin brushing her shoulder. "She looks like you," he whispered, his voice still heavy from sleep. "She has your scowl," Alessia murmured back, smiling. He chuckled softly. "Let's hope she grows out of that." They stood there in silence, swaying gently, the weight of the past finally quiet. No contracts. No secrets. Just family. Later that day, the rooftop was transformed into something out of a dream. String lights glowed like captured stars. White flowers lined the garden path. The skyline of Lagos framed the moment as close friends and family gathered in quiet celebration. Alessia wore a simple white dress, elegant, soft, and untouched by diamonds or gowns. In her arms, her daughter slept peacefully. Luca stood at her side. No suit. Just a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled, his hand warm in hers. They didn't exchange traditional vows. They didn't need to. Instead, in front of those who mattered, Luca looked into her eyes and spoke simply. "I spent years building a world where no one could touch me. Then you walked in, and destroyed all my walls. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I swear on this life we've built, I will never stop choosing you. Every day. For the rest of mine." Alessia's eyes glistened. She turned to him, her voice steady, heart full. "I came into this thinking I was saving myself. I didn't know I'd end up saving you too. You taught me that love doesn't always arrive gently, but when it's real, it never leaves. So this is my vow, I am yours. And you are mine. No signatures needed." Their guests clapped softly. The baby stirred in her arms. And Luca, once feared and untouchable, leaned down and pressed a kiss to his daughter's forehead. "This is forever," he whispered. That night, they lay together beneath the stars. Alessia rested against his chest, their baby asleep in the bassinet beside the bed. Luca traced small circles along her shoulder. "I used to think love made men weak," he said quietly. And now? She asked. He turned his head, kissed her temple. Now I know, it makes us bulletproof.